Silence has always been one of the deepest mysteries of human life. When most people hear the word silence, they imagine emptiness or a blank space without sound. But for those who search for truth, silence is not empty. It is full of hidden meaning. Human life is surrounded by endless noise. The constant talk of people, the sounds of machines, the rush of cities, and even the restless thoughts of our own mind. This noise distracts us from listening to what lies beyond. Yet when noise disappears, something unusual happens. In silence, the soul begins to feel its own presence more clearly. A strange awareness rises, as if a hidden voice is waiting to be heard. Many mystics and philosophers, from Ibn Arabi to Rumi, have described silence as the true language of God. They believe that God does not always speak in human words, but in the deeper way, that the heart can understand when the tongue is still and the mind is calm. In silence, there are no arguments, no confusions, no masks. Instead, there is clarity, peace, and the presence of something greater than ourselves. Silence is not nothingness. It is a doorway. Through this doorway, one can enter into the unseen world, where understanding comes not from books or teachers, but from direct experience. To the mystic, silence is alive. It teaches, it comforts, it guides, and it connects. This is why silence has always been described as sacred. Because in silence, the human being draws closest to the voice of God. Throughout history, silence has been treated as sacred in almost every spiritual tradition. In the deserts of early Christian monks, silence was seen as the path to God. They would sit in caves away from people, believing that without silence, the voice of God could not be heard. In Islam, Sufi mystics like Ibn Arabi, Rumi, and Al-Ghazali often wrote that words can only point towards truth, but silence allows the seeker to taste truth directly. They understood that language has limits. It can describe, but it cannot fully reveal the depth of divine reality. Hindu sages in India also practice long periods of silence, called mauna, to purify the mind and awaken inner awareness. Similarly, Buddhist monks believe that true wisdom comes when the chatter of the mind is stilled through meditation. Even in the Quran and the Bible, silence is shown as a moment of receiving divine inspiration and reflection. What is common in all these traditions is the belief that silence is not emptiness, but presence. It is a space where one becomes open, humble, and receptive. It is a sacred tool that allows a person to go beyond surface-level noise and enter into deeper connection with the Creator. In silence, one learns to listen not only with ears, but with the heart, to perceive meanings beyond words. That is why mystics across centuries have agreed that silence itself is a language, God's own language, through which He communicates with the soul. When people speak of silence as the language of God, they are pointing to something beyond ordinary sound. Human words are limited. They can carry meaning, but they often fail to express the depth of spiritual experience. The heart, however, has its own way of listening. In silence, the heart becomes like a mirror, reflecting truths that cannot be spoken. Imagine a lake on a windy day. The water is disturbed and nothing can be seen clearly. But when the wind stops and the surface becomes calm, the lake reflects the sky perfectly. In the same way, when the noise of our thoughts and desires settles down, the heart begins to reflect the light of God. This is why mystics say that the heart is the true place of revelation. Prophets, saints, and sages throughout history received divine wisdom not through endless talking, but through silent moments of inner listening. Ibn Arabi once wrote that the heart has two eyes. One looks at the world, and the other looks at God. The eye that looks at God opens only in silence. In those moments the soul feels touched by something vast, eternal, and beyond time. The person may not hear words, but they receive understanding. They may not see forms, but they feel presence. Silence gives birth to an inner dialogue with the divine, where the heart understands what the tongue cannot describe. This is why silence is not absence, but a higher form of communication, a dialogue between God and the soul. If we look at the world around us, we find that silence is written into the very structure of the universe. The vastness of space is silent, yet in that silence, galaxies are born, and stars continue their eternal dance. The earth itself speaks more through silence than through sound. The rising of the sun, the flowing of rivers, the growth of trees, all of these happen without words, yet they express the wisdom of creation. Nature teaches us that silence is not emptiness, but power working quietly. A seed buried under the soil remains silent, yet in that silence it transforms into a tree that can live for hundreds of years. The human body, too, follows this hidden law. The heart beats silently, blood flows silently, and countless processes of life continue without our notice. It is in silence that the deepest realities exist and function. Mystics have always pointed to this truth, saying that if one wants to understand God, one must look at His creation, which speaks silently yet powerfully of His presence. Ibn Arabi described the cosmos as a book written by God, but not in letters or words. It is written in the silent patterns of stars, mountains, oceans, and skies. Silence in nature is a sign of divine communication, a reminder that the Creator does not need sound to express Himself. The grandeur of the universe itself becomes a silent sermon, inviting the human soul to listen with awe and humility. In the end, silence is not just about the absence of sound, but about the presence of something greater. When a person chooses silence, they begin a journey of transformation. In the stillness, the noise of the outer world fades, and the hidden voices of the inner world rise. At first, this can be uncomfortable, because silence makes us face our fears, our doubts, and our unhealed wounds. Yet as one stays with silence, these layers slowly dissolve, and a deeper awareness begins to shine. Mystics say that God speaks not to the ear, but to the soul, and the soul can only hear when the mind is quiet. In silence, the ego loosens its grip, and the person becomes open to truths that cannot be learned from books or teachers. It is here that inspiration, clarity, and guidance flow like a gentle stream. Many prophets and sages withdrew into silence before receiving divine messages. Moses on Mount Sinai, Jesus in the desert, the prophet Muhammad in the cave of Hira, all turned to silence before the light of revelation descended upon them. This shows that silence is not passive. It is an active preparation for receiving wisdom. When we embrace silence, we discover that it is not empty but full of presence, full of meaning, full of God. That is why silence has been called the language of God. It is the secret bridge between the human soul and the divine, a timeless conversation without words.